What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And Robert E. Felice.
Hello.
And I got some bad blood with all of you. If you don't click on that like button, and make sure that you are subscribed and ring that notification bell and get all your email alerts set up for the post-show side of the Bad Blood review that we'll be doing. But this is the predictions podcast, so we'll talk about that. But if you are over there on YouTube, make sure that you click on the thanks button as well. Make sure that you join us over on the YouTube channel membership, which you should have access right now, early access, it should say, to the main event from a few weeks from now that it'll be eventually be up on the public side of it on the 16th. But right now, if you want to already, check out the Fantasy Spooking edition of the Matchmaker Ultimate Halloween Havoc that is up on the channel for people that are on the Adblock Forgiveness tier and higher. So if you want to join the Darkcast tier or the Pick Your Poison tier, whatever it might be, then, of course, if you are on the Pick Your Poison tier, you get to request something extra on top of that. But if you are just on the other ones like that, you get those different tiers and you get access to that earlier. And if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things through the merchandise stores, Redbubble and TeePublic, or where you can pick that up too. And, of course, live chats during the post-show. As I said, we will be having our traditional post-show immediately following Bad Blood, which starts, I believe, at 6 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. Although it's really strange. This time around, they didn't put anything up on the streaming docket schedule of countdown to Bad Blood or Bad Blood pre-show or anything indicating that. And
maybe they're just not going to do it.
I haven't seen a single thing that has said directly the pre-show blah 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 or anything. So I'm wondering if they don't have a pre-show anymore. And that in and of itself, if that happens, that'll be a talking point of just oh, wait, look at that. They got rid of that. But it could just be an oversight on the website. Maybe somebody didn't get the memo and, they have errors on the site all the time. So if it starts at 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever it might be, from whenever the point that the pre-show starts onward, there will be live coverage on smarkoutmoment.com. I'll have my EWN post up and we'll kind of roll along with that. And eventually when it ends, we'll have the post-show. That's kind of the whole point of it being a post-show. It has to be afterward. But we do have to break down what we think is going to happen prior to it with our predictions here. And as usual, we want to know what you have to say. So drop your thoughts in the comment section below and tell us your predictions, your thoughts on our predictions for these 5 matches that are currently announced. And we are assuming that they're not going to add any more matches because they typically don't at this point. And 5 seems to be sort of the rule of thumb for most of these pay-per-views at this point. Plus, we know they've got a lot of the big names already on the card, and a lot of the other names that aren't on the card that are set up to do big things and are more important people are being set up for other things. Like Gunther is going to defend the World Heavyweight Championship, but it's going to be on Raw next week. Now, Jey Uso is not on this card, but we've got an Intercontinental title match on Raw next week, and the women's tag team champions are on the card, but they're not wrestling. They are hosts of the show, aka they're going to have 1 to 2 segments. I'm assuming probably just one where they go, look at this celebrity that we have. And that's about it. Whether that's Cardi B, whether that's Metro Boomin, I don't know. Maybe it's somebody else, but they do have 5 matches that are currently announced for this. 2 cage matches, and we got
that's
one.
Stretch. Stop it.
It's a cage match in some way. We got 2 titles on the line, and honestly, it's another very in your house pay-per-view to me. There are big names. There are some interesting things. I'm interested to see what we got going for this card, but I'm not as into it as I was hoping that I would be, because I do feel like over the course of however many hours this is going to go, especially with one match in particular, if something doesn't happen to spice it up, I got a feel that I'm going to be like, okay, maybe you could have cut an entire hour out of this, if not more. But I'll dive more into that as we go along here. I am expecting the first match of the night to be the Women's World Championship match. I think that with Dominik Mysterio hanging from the ring in a shark cage, Rhea Ripley, of course, challenging Liv Morgan for the title, we've got a Hell in a Cell match coming up later on, and they're going to have to set up the Hell in a Cell at some point. They're not going to start off the pay-per-view with Hell in a Cell. So if they have to set up two different types of cages that are going to be dangling from the ceiling, or in the case of Hell in a Cell, it's going to be, they have to like prop it up, then I think that they'll probably just already have that shark cage propped up ahead of time. And maybe it's a good way to start off the pay-per-view with something hot, because this is way more important than two of the other matches that are on this card. And the scenario I'm expecting is sort of what we talked about. I think we talked about it on the air. I don't remember if we talked about it before recording or after recording, or if it was during like the hot tags or so. But I think it was Callum that brought it up first. Shark cage scenarios typically have two things that happen. Either somebody escapes the cage and that's the big thing, or they have something in them, in the cage with them, and they drop it down for somebody to use. I think it's past time that Rhea Ripley just wins this championship. And if they just do the whole thing where Liv gets like brass knuckles that Dom drops down and hits Rhea, and then she retains, and then it's okay, well now we have to have another stipulation to do that. It's not as good of an idea as just ending it now. So I think if they play with that idea, Dom has to drop something that Liv doesn't get. And either Rhea gets it and hits Liv Morgan with it, or kicks it out of the ring and, hits Liv Morgan with her finisher or something. But I am leaning way more towards the idea of new champions crowned, Rhea Ripley's champion, and this is the end of the feud.
Yeah. That probably sounds about right. I mean, I'm not super enthralled with the idea of a shark cage stipulation in general, because they've had several matches. Let's say it's been a little while since the last time we saw it, but I can still vividly recall some of the matches of James Ellsworth or an Enzo Amore hanging in the shark cage.
Enzo Amore with the baby oil sliding out of the shark cage.
Yeah, and they all have as Tony mentioned, all have very similar finishes, and there's usually nothing really super creative about what's going to happen, because if it's suspended above the ring, you can just drop down, a chain or brass knucks or something into the ring. And if it's on the floor, you can find some way to knock the referee out that's guarding the cage, get the key, and then try and interfere. Either way, it should still end with Rhea getting the victory and taking the title back. But it kind of just opens a more general picture for me of like these two don't wrestle a lot at all. Like, considering the fact this is your feud for the women's title, and it's kind of been the feud for your women's division for pretty much the entirety of this year, pretty much since WrestleMania at the very least. I know Rhea has been away for a lot of that period, but that's kind of the whole story has been about Rhea and Liv. Like, they don't wrestle, like, hardly ever, really. I mean, was this going to be Rhea's third match since coming back from injury, and they've all been the pay-per-views? So she just doesn't actually wrestle on TV at all. So is it like really something to be super excited about that she's going to win the title back? Because maybe we should be concentrating on putting the title on people that are actually going to wrestle not every single week, but more frequently than these two do.
Well, I'd like to pose a question. Of all of the individuals on this card, how many of them really wrestle week to week?
I mean, the person who wrestles the most is probably Finn.
I was thinking Bayley.
Yeah, Finn and Priest probably, yeah.
I was thinking Bayley. Because with all the Judgment Day stuff, they're even getting to the point where, like, Finn's had the last, 3 weeks off. Priest has been wrestling a bit, but a lot of these people aren't wrestling. But that is a great point that you bring up.
Well, there is kind of like this general thing with WWE right now, and I know it makes a lot of sense because of the fact that like the TV and the pay-per-views are slightly different, and the big stars appear on the pay-per-views, and they don't really wrestle as much on TV. I mean, you got let me put it this way: like, it's not like Liv and Rhea are the biggest culprits on this entire card. You've got Roman Reigns in the match here, so there's a slightly different level when it comes to him, but it does feel quite odd that just like they just. Because there's women's matches on TV all the time, but it's always like the same. Okay, it's Sonya Deville, it's Zoe Stark, it's Io Sky, but like the actual people like right at the very top end of the card are in promo segments all the time. And so hopefully at least this match is good to help compensate for that, because it just feels like, I don't know, that they should at least be, beating people on the way to doing this, or the other women should be thinking, well, why aren't we getting either opportunities, or at least they'd say like, okay, just have like a non-title match against Liv Morgan, or like Rhea has to beat someone to earn her next opportunity, or something along those lines.
I think it's a lot of that type of, if you strip it away and you like put it in its own bubble and all, the answer is kind of, I don't know. They sort of answer themselves. I guess the questions answer themselves. Is a better way for me to phrase it. Like, I'll criticize WWE and AEW on the same front with this. Like, I don't care about Casey Catanzaro and Kaden Carter and Lyra Valkyria against Pure Fusion Collective having a match next week. Just the same as I don't care about Hangman Page against Juice Robinson. But if you tell me that there's like a championship match happening, or if it's somebody who doesn't pop up that often to wrestle and then you put them on a pay-per-view, then you inherently add a little bit more value to it, because then it's like, okay, well, now it's a special attraction. And if Cody and Roman were to team up against Solo and Jacob Fatu here, I look at it and I go, well, crap, that's the world champion. He should be defending the title. And I criticize them on that front, but then I also go, if they did that on an episode of SmackDown, it'd be a really big main event. So it's kind of like I see where they're going with, they don't use a lot of these people to actually wrestle because they do want to kind of keep them healthier and they want to make them special attractions on that front. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, then can't we get those people that people want to see more often in that kind of capacity a little bit more, and a little bit less of the people that I don't really care all that much about? Because I'd rather that be on the house shows, and then to make the TV shows a better priority than the house shows, and then to make the pay-per-views the biggest priority of all of it. And there was always a pecking order for me, and it's where we get into even like, we'll finish up what we're talking about here with them, but like the Damian Priest and Finn Balor thing, I'm like, does that really need to be a pay-per-view match? Oh, okay, it makes it seem more useful, I guess, and it upgrades it by being a pay-per-view match. But then I go, that could have been in the episode of Raw, and the Gunther and Sami Zayn match could have been on here instead. So,
okay, while I agree with you in theory, well, let's finish this match first.
Well, I would go with Rhea Ripley needs to just win the title here, and the feud's gone on long enough. It's been a solid feud, but yeah, they haven't been wrestling all that often. And ultimately, am I loving the feud for the wrestling, or am I loving, or liking at least, the feud for the character work? I go more for the character work. So this one, I'm not as opposed to them being in that kind of position. Some of the other ones we'll talk about in a bit.
Yeah, I'm going to say Ripley wins. For the record, I just did the True Heel Heat Bad Blood preview, and the thought was put into my ear of maybe a returning Raquel Rodriguez acts as Liv Morgan's heater going forward, and I can see that if she's cleared. But overall, I just think that it's time for Ripley to win this belt, because Raw is largely a heel-heavy show for the women, and I think that regardless of who wins, I want this to be the last match between them for a while. So I would rather see Ripley defend against any of the heels or some of the, tweeners like an Io Sky, a Kyrie, or like a Bianca or Jade, because they can do that because of the tag champs. I'd rather see that than see Liv Morgan against Lyra Valkyria. So I'm thinking Morgan wins, and I think it makes the most sense for her to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fully behind winning the title back here. I just think that this has just been, it's helped elevate Morgan a little bit. It's been involved with the story, but pretty much outside of the match at SummerSlam, the whole story has been Ripley beating the Judgment Day like a drum. So I think that will follow suit here, and she'll get the title back, and so they can feel like the big stars holding the belt again.
I still can't think of anybody that I would book her against for WrestleMania. I know that like the main theory people are going around with is Io Sky, and I'm like, that doesn't feel like it doesn't click for me. That's not to say that Io is bad or anything, because she isn't, but I don't see that being a WrestleMania thing. I see that being more like Io challenges that maybe Royal Rumble or maybe Survivor Series or something, depending on if they do a War Games match instead or whatever. But that's another whole thing too. There's not setting anything up for a women's War Games match. But
they got it just hit October, bro.
Yeah, they don't have that much time.
They got enough.
Let's put it this way. They got enough time that they can set something up if they just want to throw names out there. But if they want to have something kind of like the Bloodline thing, then that's not going to happen. But there's no real setup that I'm seeing, at least. It's we're probably looking at a year where it's team one person against team one person, and they just have friends that pop up in the 3 weeks leading up to it, and completely unnecessary War Games match. But
I mean, I think that whoever wins the Women's Royal Rumble will be the one that challenges Rhea Ripley for the title at WrestleMania.
Well, most likely.
Well, they could challenge for the other women's world title.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's
that's. I still think that's Charlotte and Bianca, and I think likely it'll just be a Becky rematch.
It might just be. And I don't know, maybe she turns heel or something. She's got to re-sign with the company first, of course, before we do any of that. But I'm not really I want Rhea to win the title here, but I am a little bit worried that they don't have anywhere to go after that, because so much of this story is just whether or not Rhea is going to win that championship. And then once that happens, where do they go from there that actually is interesting enough to compensate for that lack of, not having that same Dom and Liv and Rhea storyline anymore? Because if it is just Raquel comes back and she just says, I want to fight you, and then they go in that way, okay, maybe you can get a month out of that, but it's going to be a drop off. People aren't going to be as invested.
If they do it that way, you get a crown jewel match out of that, and then your War Games is Liv, Raquel, PFC, Rhea, Damage Control, and Becky Lynch.
Maybe.
And there you go. I'm just saying that because you were saying they hadn't set anything up. I think it'll be fine, but I think it'll be a lot harder to get through if Liv Morgan just wins here with no direction for Ripley directly going out of it.
I mean, if Liv wins, I have no clue what they do after that. Yeah. That would be really strange. So that's not the only Terror Twins match, though. Finn Balor and Damian Priest are happening singles match as well. And, of course, no titles on the lines here, no extra stipulations. There isn't really anything that's going to stop it from being just a regular Monday Night Raw match. We could very easily just see the rest of Judgment Day interfere here and keep it as generic as that could be, which I'm hoping is not the case, naturally, because I don't like that happening a million times. But it could be as simple as just Damian Priest beats Finn Balor, and then they move on from that, too. And I kind of want that to happen because I'm a little bit sick and tired of every single Monday Night Raw being the Judgment Day does the same thing. The same people fight, they brawl, and then that's the end of it. Like, I'm okay after a certain amount of months to move on to something else. And I'd rather just end with Priest and Balor here. Priest beats Balor. They move on to something.
I would be so comfortable with Judgment Day just kind of going away. If you're just asking me what I want, like, that would be it. But I want to address your earlier point about, well, this could just be a Raw match, and then you put Gunther and Sammy on the show. And I get it in theory, but with these pay-per-view spots being so coveted now, you run the risk of, like, because the fan base isn't very, they don't think beyond what they're given. It's just like, well, if they can't get on the pay-per-view, then Finn Balor means nothing, then Priest means nothing, And I think that is the hardest part about the way they're doing the pay-per-views right now, is you do have that constant, like, well, if this can't get on the pay-per-view, then it doesn't matter. And then you're constantly having to have that juggling act. So I do think this match was important for a pay-per-view. Balor did screw him out of the world title. You have to have some kind of resolution there. But I do get what you're saying. Like, this might just play out like it was, a third-hour Raw main event.
Mm-hmm. Especially if it ends up having all that interference.
Yeah, I mean, I could totally see Judgment Day get involved. I could see LWO get involved in this one as well. I mean, it depends, because maybe they don't want to pay wrestlers to be on these shows, probably. So maybe there won't be as much. But yeah, I think that there's a chance of this, because it doesn't have any kind of stipulation going into it. It's just a singles match, but they have, done a decent enough job of holding off on doing this since SummerSlam. I've just been doing like some sort of configuration of it, or keeping Balor and Priest pretty separated. It should be a decent match, but yeah, and it's somewhat difficult to predict, because because there is nothing on the line. You could have Balor just get the victory over Priest, and and then he has a rematch with him later down the road and gets his victory back, or you could just have Priest beat Balor and then just draw a line under it completely. So, like, the direction for both of them isn't particularly clear. I mean, Balor's is clearer in the sense that he's a tag team champion, so eventually he'll have to defend and lose those titles at some point. But for Priest, there isn't really a clear who's next for him, beyond potentially going back after Gunther in the world title at some point, because I don't imagine he's going to be fighting Jey Uso for the title. So yeah, it's whether they want to just continue this because they're both in a bit of a holding pattern right now, or whether they just want to draw a line under it completely. But I think it's in their better interests to extend it out further, in which case I think you should need to have Balor beat Priest.
I really hope that they're past the point of trying to extend that, because in general, most of these storylines have been going on for months, and I've hit my limit of that, knowing how few pay-per-views are left going forward. If you really think about it, we're kind of in that WrestleMania season already, which is like, it's kind of crazy. And I know that there are still many months where things can change, and there's all that stuff, but like, the next pay-per-view outside of NXT's Halloween Havoc is Crown Jewel, November 2nd. Then we have War Games already, Survivor Series on November 30th. We have that Saturday night's main event, which is like a pseudo pay-per-view in December. And then we're already around to Royal Rumble February 1st. And for all we know, maybe Elimination Chamber and then WrestleMania. So I am kind of like, all right, I'd like to see the next phase of what's happening, so where we're not like stuck where at the end of the year in December we're still getting people feuding that have been feuding since April. That to me is like, we can move on. And
in this particular instance, this is the Judgment Day we're talking about. Like, their entire gimmick is that they have feuds that last the entire year.
Pretty much, yeah, I guess.
And also, I know what it feels like, but they haven't been feuding since April.
Well, Finn Balor and Damian Priest specifically haven't, but the Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan story, for instance, that's been since Mania. Like right after Mania's, that whole thing. And then that kind of continues, and the more that they snowball, the more that it all kind of congeals for me. So it's like, all right, I kind of want Priest to be out of the Judgment Day and to, I don't know who he would feud with next. I don't know if it would be like, maybe he fights Gunther again at another one of these pay-per-views. Not that that would be like my first thought. I wouldn't go there, but then again, they are switching up a little bit. Like Xavier Woods might be a heel going forward, and it seems like Braun Breaker is going to be a babyface now, and also maybe they adjust some of these other people here and there and stuff. But I'm thinking once we get out of the Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed feud, maybe it's Damian Priest and Bronson Reed. I don't know. But I'm okay, more than okay, with them just being like, this is the button on all of this. It's the end of the Priest and Balor stuff, and then we can move on to something else for Crown Jewel. Maybe they have a gimmick in mind, though. I don't know. They could very much extend this at least until Crown Jewel. I don't think, at the very least, they can successfully extend this into Survivor Series and onward. I think if it's December and we're still talking about Finn Balor and Damian Priest, another 8 weeks plus of Priest comes out and is like, come on, guys, I'm going to fight you. And then the four of them fight Priest and his random friends for that week do something. I'm going to be tuning out for sure. Maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know. Of course, as always, if you guys disagree, leave a comment below. So at the end of the day, I'm going Damian Priest. What were your picks?
Balor.
Yeah, Balor.
Now here's, if I'm going to keep on the train of me being like, here's what I'm not super duper into. And again, I like Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. I like Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, terrible or anything, because everybody thinks if you don't think the thing's the best thing in the world, that it must be the worst. This, though, I am very much in the I do not care category. Bayley is getting another shot at Nia Jax, and Nia Jax has been doing much better this run than she has. We keep talking about that, and I'm going to keep echoing that because she has. I'm enjoying Nia Jax way more over the past few months than I did the last 3 years that she was before she had left originally. But it's just a rematch of a match that I didn't like to begin with, really. And I think that it's a mistake of not having Naomi involved to make it a triple threat to spice it up a little bit. I think I'm tired of Bayley and this act. I'm not interested in her winning the title back. I'm not interested in Nia Jax retaining over Bayley and just being like, well, we milked an extra month out of that. I only care about this if Tiffany Stratton wins the title. And I think there's a good chance that it could happen because there's not really anything else happening here. And they are sowing the seeds, and they've been doing this for a while and all. If she doesn't pull the trigger and win the title or cash in and lose, and then that becomes whatever kind of a story, but I hope that that's not the case, then I'm going to look at this and just be like, why did we bother? It's just the rematch clause, and I'm not interested in the match.
Yeah, but Nia needs to defend. This is one of those, it's a double-edged sword. The women's title needs to be on pay-per-view too, and I know what you're saying. They took the really long way to get here, but that's just trying to get to a pay-per-view differently than saying I'm cashing in my rematch clause. Yeah, I think Nia is just going to win here, but I also think don't count out the idea of Tiffany cashing in.
I mean, I don't know what other match they could have put on which would have been more interesting than this. Not saying that this is particularly interesting, but I don't think there is anybody really on the SmackDown roster that would have a more compelling match with Nia Jax than Bayley would.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the issues. The SmackDown's women's roster is so threadbare. I mean, what they have right now, quick rundown for anybody that's wondering. They have Bayley, they have BFAB, who doesn't wrestle, and if she did, it wouldn't be great anyway. Bianca and Jade, who are the tag champs that effectively don't do much week to week anymore.
They're hosting the show.
They're hosting the show.
They've got a really important job here.
We got Candice and Indy, who haven't really been doing much, and even if they have been, it's not been anything of particular value. They've been using them as mostly enhancement talent. Blair Davenport, who they perpetually love to just have disappear and then once a month pop up and then just go, but we don't give a shit about her. Like, they were not setting her up at all. Elektra Lopez, who hangs around with Legado, and that's it. Doesn't really do anything. Michin, who they've been pushing, but she's feuding right now with Chelsea Green and Piper Niven, and that's, she's already had her street fight with Nia Jax, which that was more entertaining than what I think we're going to get here. And then Tegan Nox is technically on SmackDown. You wouldn't know since she hasn't been on there. And then you got Naomi, who didn't get in this match. That's it. Like, they don't have people on there, and they really need to just look at that roster and go, maybe we should add a couple more names on there. There are certainly people in NXT that can be moved over, and there are people on Raw that can be moved over and kind of balance out the lineups a little bit.
I mean, the thing is that the pretty much all of the best wrestlers that they've had in the last year on the roster are either injured, like Charlotte. Although I wouldn't really class her as like one of the best wrestlers, but she's certainly one of the most over.
Yeah.
They're no longer there for whatever reason, which is Becky and stuff like that. Or they've put them in tag teams because it's Bianca's tied up with Jade Cargill and Io Sky's tied up with Kairi Sane right now. And it's just a case of, well, you've basically just, and I'd say the same thing about Alba Fyre as well, being tied up with Isla Dawn. It's like they've kind of just decided to pair them off in a tag team division, which, doesn't really do much at all anyway. But it's just like containing some of their better wrestlers when they could be, not necessarily like always fighting for the title, but could be involved in feuds which end up with title opportunities. But yeah, and it just leads to a situation where you've got this where realistically, I mean, you say that the most interesting thing is the Tiffany Stratton thing, which, would be interesting if it did happen. I certainly don't believe it will happen. But the kind of the story that they're sewing in between this is Naomi turning heel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd say the more likely finish of this match is Naomi costing Bayley the match and Nia retains, and then you just lead into a Naomi and Bayley feud in the same time you have Nia Jax still with Tiffany Stratton, like as a double act supporting each other, and you then naturally move that on to those two feuding with Bianca and Jade, which will eventually lead with either Jade or Bianca getting a title opportunity at Nia, preferably Bianca. But
which in of itself also makes it be like, okay, well then now our women's world champion or women's champion, no, it's not the same women's world championship belt, is more fighting for the tag titles than defending her own, which is like, it's, they've done things like this before. I'm not saying it's like unprecedented, but that would be an interesting way for them to go about it, is like, well, we don't have anybody for the champion, so let's not even have the champion defend the title. Let's just busy her with the tag thing and be like, damn it, guys. Like, if you know that that's the case, why don't you set yourself up for some better singles things? Like, why make that decision to do that,
Well, it'd be the case of they'll use the tag team to then parlay into Bianca probably challenging for the title. So it would lead to a singles match eventually, but the benefit is that it means that we don't have Nia Jax in singles matches and we put her in tags where Tiffany can do a lot of the work. So, I mean, I'm personally of the belief that I think they're going to save Tiffany for either a WrestleMania cash-in or the night after or week after WrestleMania cash-in. So I don't think we're going to see that happen for a while. And yeah, so I just kind of see this as being a pretty boring, nothing happening match, which Nia retains, and the biggest thing that will come out of this involves like the trajectory of Naomi rather than the two people that are actually in the match.
Yeah, I think the Naomi thing is on the table. I don't know if I want to see that because I think it'll be a lower card issue between Bayley and Naomi, which will just lead to probably nothing more than they just fight a lot on SmackDown. And that could be fun for a couple weeks, but with the way that certain things get stretched out, it wouldn't be my favorite thing. I ultimately think that Nia wins here. Maybe Bayley and Naomi could like do a little bit of a tag team thing for a bit, and that will eventually lead the turn. I still think it's Charlotte. I think Charlotte's got to come back, win that belt from Nia, and then that's when Tiffany will probably cash in, and then that sets up a buffer of Charlotte Tiffany until you get to whatever you want the Mania match to be.
So if you guys had to make the multi-step projection right now, we got Crown Jewel, we got Survivor Series, we got Saturday Night's Main Event, which I kind of count that, but I kind of don't because it's sort of like
it's their equivalent to a December pay-per-view this year.
Yeah, it's like, but we don't know how long it's going to be. Is it going to be an hour special, a 2-hour one, 3-hour one? How many matches are they going to try to get in there? Is it going to be just a matter of them being like, hey, The Rock is in a tag team match and that's all that matters, and then the rest is like maybe there's one more match and then some promos, 2 matches for an hour, that kind of thing. Like we don't know how they're going to set that up yet, but we do know Crown Jewel's coming up November 2nd, so that's going to be the next big priority. And then we got War Games, which should be based off of the fact that they've done the War Games thing twice now on like the, you know, main roster side of it. I would think that this would probably be a setup where there's only 5 matches again at War Games, probably be a men's and a women's, and then insert 3 more matches, maybe Gunther defends his title or, you know, Intercontinental titles on the line or whatever it might be. Where do you think we're going for like the Tiffany Stratton cash-in thing, the Mania thing? Because Rob, you're saying a different setup than what I'm saying, which is a different setup from Callum. Like we're all 3 in different things. Callum's saying not cash in until after Mania. So do you think that that's Nia still champion come Mania?
No, I think Nia might not be champion by the end of this year.
What about you, Callum?
I say, like, I'm already kind of like annoyed at myself that I've kind of broken my rule, which is I don't talk about WrestleMania until 2025. Because I think that we always get, and I know it's because the way they think, and I don't want to get roped into the idea of everything revolves around what's happening at WrestleMania because it's such a bullshit way of thinking. So yeah, I'm not even gonna. I'm just saying that's what I think is going to happen. I don't really care or don't give a fuck about how they get to that.
Because I'm still going to put it out there. I think we're getting either Tiffany Stratton against Charlotte Flair, or if not that, then it's Charlotte versus somebody else. I can't picture Nia still in the title scene come Mania. But we'll see. I mean, it could all change here. It could all change at Crown Jewel. For all I know, it's Nia Jax versus Bayley again at WrestleMania, and I'll, you know, pull my eyes out and be like, oh my God, I'm sick and tired of this. But yeah, this match is the one that I'm like, I don't care at all about this unless there's a cash in. If it ends up being Nia wins or Bayley wins, either one, I think it's a waste. But I am very much excited about, well, let's put this, I was going to say about the Hell in a Cell match, but there seems to be a 50-50 type of thing going on here. Is the Hell in a Cell match going to be the main event or is it a tag team match? Because I think it should be the Hell in a Cell match. But we're talking Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes against Bloodline with the possibility of The Rock even returning. I'm thinking Hell in a Cell is not going to be the main event.
Where's everybody getting that from?
Pat McAfee.
I don't see Rock showing up at Bad Blood. I think the tag match or the women's world title will open. I think Hell in a Cell's got to close.
I mean, if it was up to me, I'd say the Hell in a Cell is the main event, and you have the tag match to open the show. But as I say, it could go either way. I mean, we know that the rule is Roman either kicks off or ends the show, so we know it's one or the other. But yeah, I think it depends on how they want to end each match.
Well, which one do you guys want to talk about first?
A tag match, because I think there's. I don't know. I think that it's slightly maybe more interesting, but I think that it'll be the worst of the two matches.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is, for anybody who's not fully aware of the card, it's the Bloodlines, Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu against Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes teaming up for their unlikely alliance. How will they coexist, kind of a thing. And the setup for that is essentially just it's a tag team match. It's not like there's no stakes attached to it. There isn't anything that is stipulation, or this isn't Bloodline rules. This isn't anything along those lines. It's just a tag team match, at least as far as right now. Now, maybe they announce something different on SmackDown and they kind of up the ante a little bit. Maybe they make it a no DQ, whatever the setup might be. There is the speculation that The Rock could return based off of this whole Cody Rhodes on Pat McAfee show, and that the big guy might be returning, and Cody saying that something big is going to happen at Bad Blood that can set up something for Crown Jewel, which I would think maybe that's a good sign of The Rock versus Cody Rhodes at Crown Jewel could be a possibility. It's not anywhere near a guarantee, but something to keep an eye on. But they must have something in mind of where they want to go after this, to where I can't picture this just being Cody and Roman beat Solo and Jacob Fatu. They work together, they slap hands, hey, we're friends now, and that's the end of it. And I don't think it's going to be as simple either as Solo and Jacob end up winning because Cody and Roman can't get on the same page. And then that's just, well, now we're mad at each other because we still couldn't work it out. Because I don't know where they go for Crown Jewel to set up the War Games thing. And it could be as simple as Cody and Roman against each other at Crown Jewel because they win this match. And it's like, okay, well, you gave me your word that you were going to have my back. I had your back. Now let's settle it with Cody versus Roman 3 at at Crown Jewel. I can't picture Roman getting pinned, and I can't picture Cody getting pinned. So if they lose, I think it's not necessarily that they lose. I think it would be one of those things where they just throw the match out and it's a no contest, or it's a double count out, or some kind of schmoz.
Why can't they lose?
I'm not saying that they can't. I'm just saying I can't picture that they will. Because Roman in particular could take a pinfall.
I think he's going to. I think Solo will pin Roman. Jacob Fatu will do the work, but I think Solo will pin Roman to set up. Okay, they have a singles match at Crown Jewel, which then sets up Roman being like, "I'm tired of being outnumbered."
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get into War Games. I don't think it's not impossible that Cody gets pinned. Cody can easily get pinned. He was pinned at Money in the Bank. But there's more for Cody on the other end of this with Kevin and Randy than there is with, okay, let me stick around this Bloodline thing for a month.
That's another whole element to this too, is they keep pushing the Kevin Owens and Randy Orton side of it. They got to come back around to that at some point. Whether that's at Crown Jewel, whether that's that they're a part of the team for War Games, which I really hope is not the case. I don't want this to be Roman, Cody, Randy, Kevin, and insert someone else, whether it's Jimmy or not. Like, I wanted this to be like old Bloodline versus new Bloodline. Maybe you throw Cody in there, but there's a lot of different ways that they could go here.
I think, by the way, if they don't give fans old Bloodline versus new Bloodline and they just did an amalgamation of baby faces plus Roman Reigns, I think a lot of fans would be very, very upset.
I don't think they care. And if they are upset, they'll just be, just typing onto it like, I'm so upset about this, and then pay the money and watch it, and it's like not actually care in the grand scheme of things. I don't think that there's a world where they can get this War Games, this old Bloodline versus new Bloodline match to work. Because you've got Jey Uso tied up with the Intercontinental title right now on Raw. Jimmy Uso's nowhere to be seen. Probably return at some point, but they'll just be on SmackDown. And Sami Zayn's tied up in the world title picture on Raw. It's like there's no configuration where this can all kind of work. I know it's the idea of like there's the brand split, so it doesn't really matter. But the brand split doesn't have any influence whatsoever. But if you want to try and keep some sort of semblance of that, but they haven't even like really set any sort of like the wheels in motion. It's not like there's any sort of subtle hints that Jay's like keeping an eye on what's happening over on SmackDown, or that Sammy's involved in any of that stuff. So I think that we are really, because you know I'm just going back to this like bottom of the third or the top of the third thing that Paul Heyman says. I'm truly believe that we're into a scenario where we will get old Bloodline versus new Bloodline, but that's War Games 2025.
It could happen.
Because
they drag this stuff out a lot, yeah.
Because my mindset now is just going into, based on all the moving parts that are going on, my vision for this is that Roman and Cody get the victory here, and then they have their title match at Crown Jewel, which is interrupted by the Bloodline, and so that ends in slightly Aussie no contest thing. And then at War Games, it is the four members of the Bloodline versus Cody, Randy, Kevin, and Roman. Or maybe there's a very good possibility, considering his schedule, that Roman just does the match at Crown Jewel and then is just written off TV for 3 War Games, and then you just have someone else slot in. And maybe that's where you get Jimmy Uso coming back to be the 4th member of that team, and then you start building up the idea that Roman's going to get his bloodline back. But I think that is the direction I think it's going, at least for this match, and then for the short-term projection after it. Because I don't think they're going to do Roman and Solo until at least maybe Royal Rumble-ish time. Especially if the idea is that they will eventually do Rock versus Roman at WrestleMania. But again, that's all just like speculation at this point, because there's just so much to happen between now and then. But yeah, I just don't envision in his first match back from his hiatus that Roman loses the match. I think they have to have him win. I think they'll probably pin Jacob Fatu just to give him his first loss, and that's like, you know, it's a decent person for him to get pinned by. Like, it's not like he needs to maintain like this super long undefeated streak. So yeah, my vision is Cody and Roman win, and then they have their title match at Crown Jewel.
If they do pin one of those team members, it's probably Jacob Fatu. What do you think is more likely? Superman punch into a Crossroads for the pin, or Crossroads and then Fatu is like still standing up, staggering, and gets speared?
Well, Cody will probably have to hit like 7 Crossroads, because even like freeze is minimum that he needs to win the match anyway. But no, I think Roman's getting the pin. So
me too.
The spear by Roman.
Yeah, I think Crossroads into a spear.
I'd actually like envision a scenario where if you wanted to really like try and build a bit of animosity going into their title match, not that you necessarily need it because their history so far, but you'd have like Cody setting up to hit the Crossroads, Roman blind tags himself to make sure that he can hit the spear and get the victory. Because at the end of the day, Roman is now being treated like a babyface, but he hasn't done anything to earn the babyface thing, so he should still act somewhat heelish and a bit of a dick, because at the end of the day, nothing's changed beyond the fact that he's just targeting his some old members of the Bloodline and the new members of the Bloodline.
Yeah, hopefully they don't take that initiative to be like, okay, well, now we need to make him suffer and succotash babyface again. I don't think that they're going to do that, though.
No, I don't imagine.
Vince out of the picture, yeah.
I don't think he would allow it. I think he would leave. I'm sure he has enough money. Yeah, I can't. What Callum laid out is actually very clever and it's something that they could do, but I can't imagine that we're not absolutely getting the Bloodline wins here. And I just, maybe I'm not thinking enough about like, oh, well, the main event of Crown Jewel is just a WrestleMania rematch. But I don't know. I feel like it needs to be Solo and Roman going now, because I think that one of the big hooks for the Royal Rumble is going to be like, it's a star-studded one, and that Roman's in it, Punk's in it, John's in it, and I think that's the way they're going for that. So I can't see them doing the first singles encounter around Rumble time.
I'm hoping that we especially don't have a scenario where they don't think, let's milk this in a way where we get Cody Rock at WrestleMania and Roman Solo at Mania. I'm worried about that. And then by proxy of that, what I would rather them do here, I'd rather them do, let's say, we got this thing with Kevin Owens, which that has to work itself out at some point. And it can't just be, I mean, technically it can be anything, because technically anything can happen, and you know, whether they plan it or not, sometimes things just don't work out. But I would hope that it wouldn't just be 1 week, Kevin Owens is like, never mind, I'm okay, and that's the end of the feud. But I would rather see Cody versus Kevin, if they are going to do another match, do that at Crown Jewel, and do Roman and Solo at Crown Jewel. And then we can have the War Games thing. And hopefully over the course of November, they set up Jay coming back and Jimmy coming back and Sammy, and they kind of have that 5-match setup. But then what the hell's happening with Talatonga either? That's a whole thing too. So if we don't have that, and if we don't have The Rock in there, then we have to start questioning that too. So I don't know. But at least right now, before anything happens with like SmackDown and stuff is concerned, I'm leaning more towards the idea that Cody and Roman win, and that it's a pin on Jacob Fatu.
I'm gonna say Blood wins, and it's Solo pinning Roman.
The new Mega Powers winning.
So Solo and Jacob.
Mm.
Actually, was trying to brainstorm.
When I look at Solo, the thing that immediately springs to mind is Mega.
As
opposed to the first thing that pops to mind when I see Logan Paul, which is Margo.
Yeah.
What's
the first thing when you think of Umaga?
They should team up Logan Paul and Glenn Jacobs and make them Margo Powers.
I was trying to think of something that we could do, and I didn't really brainstorm it well enough, but something that we could do, like a Mega Powers-ish thing to base off of this. And I don't know. I tried to brainstorm like who would be the Mega Powers of each generation or something, and it never manifested. But if everybody's interested in hearing more about that or whatever, maybe play around with it on like a Darkcast or something. But if that's the main event, then that's the main event. And then that's even more so of a chance that somebody like The Rock or whatever will return. But there is an extremely good chance that the main event is the Hell in a Cell match. I mean, it's the thing that's on the logo right now. So it's not only the biggest gimmick match here, but it's arguably just as big of a feud, if not, just slightly underneath the Bloodline thing. CM Punk and Drew McIntyre stepping inside that cage. And I am very nervous that Punk is going to get injured for this in a way that is going to put him off the roster for another few months, and he'll end up missing the Royal Rumble again and doing all that. I think that Punk needs to win this. And I think he needs to win it for a few different reasons. Number one being, it should probably just be the end of the feud. And more than likely, I tend to lean towards babyfaces winning the end of most feuds. Kind of depends on, circumstances. Each situation's different. Number two, he won a match that isn't really a great win by doing the strap match. It's not a definitive victory by any means, so this gives him a definitive win. And I think that if this is the main event, you send people home happy. Plus, I also think that Punk and Drew McIntyre, if that ends, the person that I think has more momentum to go towards something particular is Punk against Gunther. They already kind of mentioned it.
I wish this match, much like the Bad Blood Hell in a Cell we just watched the other day, I wish it was, and the winner gets a title shot at Survivor Series. Because at least I like the idea of it having even more stakes, and there's a clear setup of like, this is done. They're moving on to different things. Yeah, we know that in general, but it would be cool if they set it up that way. I also think Punk is winning. I think they will bleed. And this time, unlike Edge and Balor, they won't stop the match for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I think both men are going to bleed it. It'll feel the closest to an old school Hell in a Cell that we felt in probably a decade. And that's exciting to me. I'm also, much like Tony, and I hate this, afraid every time Punk wrestles that he's just going to get hurt again. But hopefully he can, have another good match here, and that'll be 3 he's gotten through, and then maybe we can like move on from that mindset. But it is always in my mind, and I just hope it's a really good match to end what is maybe one of the most surprising feuds ever, because this was not planned, let alone planned to be a 10-month story. So kudos to them. The build to this chapter was really nice, and I hope it ends with a satisfying conclusion.
So, yeah, I mean, part of the reason I think this is going to be the main event is because I agree with Rob that I think there will be blood in this match, and so they don't want to just have to clean up the mat at the end of it. But I don't know how much blood there's going to be, but we know when Punk blades, he really blades. So he could get some pretty serious colour on this if they allow him to do so. Yeah, I think there should be a really good ending to what I think is a feud. Again, based on someone who isn't watching it like in its entirety, but from what the bits and pieces I've seen of it is kind of under-delivered in ring in the same way it's very much delivered in the promo segments and animosity between the two of them. So hopefully this is kind of like the high point in terms of the match. You don't have to, no stupid special guest referee and bracelets that's the centerpiece of everything, or no having to touch the corners of the ring to get a victory. Like, you actually 2 people in the ring just there to kill each other and pin the other one and get the definitive victory. And I think Punk should win because there is just more potential in the Punk match, as much as McIntyre's played a key role in this feud and has done excellent work. The money is in a Punk match at WrestleMania against the top guy, whether that's against Gunther, whether that's against Rhodes, whether that's against whoever. And so he should come out of this on top. But, and as I say, I'm less worried about the injury thing because he's had 2 matches already against McIntyre. He's come through them unscathed. I know they're going to probably introduce more gimmicks into this one because of the Hell in a Cell stipulation, so there'll probably be chairs and tables and all this other stuff involved. But everyone is right to be always speaking about Punk's well-being because he has gotten injured so often in the last couple of years since his return. But I'm not too fearful of that happening in this match. It's actually it's one of those weird things that the kind of the more dangerous the match, probably the better chances are that they're going to be safe. Because the Punk's injuries have basically been just a one-on-one match with John Moxley that didn't actually go particularly long whatsoever and jumping into the crowd. So it's actually the more innocuous things that he does are the things that get him injured. So
yeah, but if he gets if he wins the win here and he celebrates and puts his hands up, then maybe he got an injury.
That would be the moment. Because remember, he got injured in the Moxley match by delivering the elbow, didn't he?
I think it was that, yeah, and then he got injured in the Royal Rumble taking the Future Shock DDT, so...
Yeah, so don't do a Future Shock.
No, I mean, Punk's the sort of guy that would have this match and recline to the top of the cage and do loads of spots on it and then break his fingers as he climbs down the cage afterwards. so yeah, that's the thing to watch out for. But yeah, hopefully it is violent. Hopefully they just let them go all out and do some cool stuff in this match, because I think this feud has been like really good and probably is up there and probably in most people's category for like feud of the year for WWE. But I think it just needs that definitive match to help it get that credential fully. And so this is their last and best opportunity to do so.
I'm looking forward to that. I think that should be the main event for a few different reasons that we've already talked about. But whether it is or it isn't, we don't know for sure. We don't know how any of this is necessarily going to play out, any kind of surprises that might be along the way too. It's the good thing about not fully knowing is maybe we've got some cool shit we're going to talk about on Saturday night. Of course, we will be talking about that on Saturday night on the post show, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you have your email alerts set up. Make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, checking out smarkoutmoment.com, doing all that good stuff. Going to the link tree that you can find over there on amangotree.com, chatting it up on the Discord server, and checking out Fanboys Anonymous, how everything else pretty much goes. But if you don't know where to find all those links, anthonymango.com and all that stuff, you can find the Smark Out Moment links and the Fanboys Anonymous links and my own links. Just follow and share and subscribe and like those accounts and all that. And make sure you're following Robin Callum.
Yep, follow me everywhere at Dude Felice. Check out Fightful.com. Subscribe to Fightful Select for early access to all the scoops provided by Sean Ross Sapp and others. And I appreciate all the support, but check out what Callum's got going on.
You can find me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every Saturday over on smarkoutmoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And you can also head on over to the Fantasy League, which is, of course, being influenced by our Bad Blood predictions. That will influence how teams may look moving forward and who has kind of to put their whims on who has who in the team, who gets extra points being added on, all that stuff. So make sure you tune in after Bad Blood to see how things have changed up since the event. And yeah, just follow it along there at www.fantasyleague.com.
Okie dokie, everybody. You know what to do. Leave those comments below and stay tuned for the next thing that's coming your way, which will be the hot tags on the Friday usual schedule that we've got. And we got the post show after that. And then rolling on into next week is kind of up in the air a little bit, but it kind of depends on what Rob and Callum are able to do. I'm going to be out of the country for a little bit. So if they are willing and able to hold down the fort, then they'll get some episodes with them. I said before, we already have that episode in the can for a few weeks from now of the fantasy booking Ultimate Halloween Havoc. So that's coming your way too. But in some fashion, you'll see my opinions about Wrestle Dream and some of the other things, depending on where I pop up and all. But stay tuned to smarkoutmoment.com and stay tuned to this channel, and we will see you when we see you. Adios for now, though, everybody. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.